According to an Irish Times exit poll, conducted by Ipsos/MRBI, Ireland has voted in a landslide to repeal the country's abortion ban. The poll suggests that the margin of victory for the yes side in the referendum will be 68% to 32%, a stunning victory for the yes side after a long and often divisive campaign, the Times reported. In particular, the referendum asked voters whether to repeal a constitutional ban on abortion, enacted as Ireland's Eighth Amendment in 1983. The debate over the motion became so massive that emigrant supporters of both repealing and upholding the law flew back to Ireland just to vote in the referendum. More than 4,500 voters were interviewed by Ipsos MRBI as they left polling stations on Friday. Sampling began at 7 a.m. and was conducted at 160 locations across every constituency throughout the day. The margin of error is estimated at +1.5%. Counting of votes began on Saturday at 9 a.m., with an official result expected to be declared in the afternoon. However, the size of the victory predicted by the exit poll leaves little doubt that, whatever the final count figures, the constitutional ban on abortion, inserted in a referendum in 1983, is set to be repealed. An exit poll published later on Friday night by Reuters during the Late Late Show mirrored the projection seen in the Irish Times exit poll. The Reuters poll predicted that 69.4% had voted yes and 30.6% had voted no. Although polls had predicted victory for the yes side, few anticipated the great wave of support for repeal of Eighth Amendment that swept the country. The highest yes vote was in Dublin, where 77% of voters backed the proposals, the Irish Times poll predicts. The expectation among no campaigners that rural Ireland would vote against changing the constitution was wide of the mark. While the majority in favour of repeal in rural Ireland, at 60%, was smaller than in urban Ireland, it was still a thumping majority in favour of change. The poll suggests that result in the rest of Leinster, outside Dublin, will be 66% yes to 34% no, while Munster will also break 66 to 34 in favour of repeal. Even Connacht Ulster, expected to be the bulwark of the anti-repeal vote, voted in favour of the constitutional change by 59% to 41%, the poll finds. The poll also finds that women voted in favour of the proposal by a massive margin, with 70% voting in favour and 30% voting against. Support among men was weaker, although still convincing, at 65% to 35%. As expected, younger voters were overwhelmingly in favor of the change, with whopping majorities in all age groups under 65. Those over 65 voted against the proposed change, the poll finds. Among the youngest voters, support for the change was overwhelming. The poll finds that 87% of those aged 18 to 24 voted for repeal. Turnout was strong from early on, with reports of people waiting outside polling stations when they opened at 7 a.m. Polling stations throughout the country reported a continued high turnout throughout the day. The results of the exit poll suggest a great swing towards repeal in the final days of the campaign, a trend hoped for by campaigners and visible on the streets, on canvases and at Dublin Airport, where thousands of repeal supporters arrived after flying home so they could vote for the constitutional change. The massive margin suggested by the exit poll will strengthen the hand of the government when it brings the promised legislation to the Dáil in the autumn. Minister for Health Simon Harris said earlier this week that he would introduce legislation allowing for abortion on request up to the 12th week of pregnancy, and thereafter in specific circumstances, to the Dáil after the summer, and seek to have it passed by the end of the year.